Brain complexity is a fatal blow to evolution. I'm here with Dr. Uditha Jayatunga, and he is a doctor and works with people with brain rehabilitation. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your work, Dr. Jayatunga?
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to do this presentation. Well, I work in UK as a consultant in rehabilitation medicine, and most of my work involves patients who have got brain disease, brain pathology, or brain injury. And I do specialist clinics for brain injured patients, and that's how my interest has come on this topic. But in general, I have always had an interest in this evolution creation debate. And because of my interest and background, I thought that I could contribute more into discussing by discussing the brain complexity. Many times in evolutionary discussions, we see the eye complexity is being discussed. Yes, eye is complex, but our brain is million times more complex. From an evolution point of view, they need to explain all complexities in life, starting from the cell to the brain. As far as we know, they're not even remotely close to making a self replicating cell. But we understand most of uh, the mechanisms in a cell. But when it comes to the brain, we even don't understand how the brain functions. So, within these two extremes, evolution has to explain all uh, all mechanisms, and there are millions and millions of mechanisms in 8.7 million species of life. And I feel that just two or three mechanisms evolution uh, gave is not even remotely adequate to explain most of the biological systems. So, evolution has to explain, as I said, the most basic thing, which is the cell, as well as the most complex thing, structure in the universe. Um, So, in the next slide, there's this showing the stars in the sky. It is said that our brain is more complex than is the most complex structure in the universe. That means we know about the distant galaxies and distant stars than our brain. And uh, uh, if you yeah, so there I have put one of the um, most complex structures, man-made structures, hadron collider and international space station. Our brain is more complex than any man-made structure. So we have, as you know, we have got trillions of things we have made, and our brain is the most complex. And it is not only complex, but it is purposeful complexity. Allen Institute for Brain Studies, which is one of the most uh, uh, leading brain research organizations in states, they have mentioned brain as a mystery. Now, on the same theme, Our brain is million times more complex than the most powerful supercomputers on Earth. And that is one of them, Frontier supercomputer, which is in the States. And it has got quintillion, it can do quintillion calculations per second. It has got massive data sets, and it gives computer power to research, industry, labs, and material sciences and climate modeling. These are some of the things which it does. But it is a supercomputer. It is one of the most advanced supercomputers on Earth, and our brain is million times more efficient than a frontier supercomputer. Obviously, any computer is a product of intelligence. And how can anyone say that our brain, which is million times more efficient, is a product of unguided, undirected process? Now, if you just look at construction of the frontier supercomputer, it may have needed probably about 10,000 steps by eminent scientists. It is held as you see, it's in a massive building, so many racks, and um, and if someone says that our brain is a product of random, unguided, undirected process, it is, I feel, that is an insult to human knowledge. Our brain has got the capacity of the internet, 2.5 petabytes. It has
Wow.
the speed of one exaflop, which is the same speed as the Frontier supercomputer. Our brain has got 500,000 kilometers of fibers. And in our brain, signals are transmitted through synapses. So cells have got projections, and these join another cell which has got projections through synapses. Our brain has got 10 into the power 15 synapses. And they say that each synapse, power of each synapse is equivalent to a laptop. So power of each synapse is equivalent to a laptop. Now we'll look at what are the functions of our brain? Knowledge, decisions, memory, emotions, movement, balance. We do get various sensations, we respond to them, stress responses, maintenance of continence, breathing, heart functions, sleep, hormonal functions, speech and language, and regulation of all organs and sexual functions. So, lots of people, when I say that our brain is more, when I say that our brain is more powerful than any computer, they will say, oh, computers will do calculations in no time, where it will take long time for us to do those calculations. But looking at the list of things I just mentioned, brain deals with so many things every second of the day. from birth till we die. All these systems are, are supremely coordinated through our brain throughout our life. And that is the difference. Where computers may be good in, uh, computers may be better if you look at one function, but brain is controlling so many functions all the time. So this is a slide produced by Allen Institute for Brain Studies. Our brain has got, that is showing cell distribution in the brain. There are 3,000 types of cells, and that shows the distribution.
Wow.
Now, if evolutionists say that everything comes one at a time, so were these cells produced one at a time? Does this look similar to a beak? How can you even start explaining from evolution basis the complexity of these cells? And in addition, our brain has got 7,000 proteins. 7,000 proteins. How were they selected? These are interactive proteins. They are not isolated proteins. You can't get one protein in isolation because these proteins interact with so many proteins at the same time. So if you say evolutionists say that they come one at a time, how can they even think of this sort of complexity? How are they being? How can natural selection select them? We have got 86 billion neurons, and in there are so many chemical reactions happen in our brain, and these the signals are transmitted what we call through neuropeptides, chemicals, and there are about up to 100 neuropeptides. So they are the chemical signals which transfer a message from one synapse to another synapse. All right. And they say each second in our brain, there are 100,000 chemical reactions each second. Now, that also means that within an hour, if you do many different things, those combinations will change all the time. So these are dynamic changes. When it comes to dynamic changes, how can evolution explain? Because it is not one combination. And as you know, when there are 50 to 100 variabilities, how many combinations it can form? Millions or trillions or more than that, right? And throughout the day, the combinations do change depending on whether we sleep, whether we study, whether we eat, whether we go for a walk or whatever it is. Depending on our activity, um, these chemical combinations change. And how can evolution even start explaining these dynamic changes? Is it similar to a beak? Changes to a beak. Now, this is a part of the brain called thalamus. So, thalamus is something, a thumb size area on either side of our brain, in the middle of the brain. And it is a relay center, right? It is a relay center. So, it gets information from one area of the body and sends it to parts of the brain. And this thalamus, each thalamus has got about 30 nuclei, right? So on both sides, there are 60, right? So that diagram shows the combinations, the pathways of 4 of those 60 nuclei, right? So those show each one shows the pathways of that nuclei to rest of the brain, right? And each of those lines will be the same in you and me. If any of those lines are missing, we will have a disability, we will have an abnormality, and life may not be possible. So that is the complexity of the brain pathways. Now, how can a so-called random mutation, so-called natural selection, select any of them? Do this? Does a mutation select one part of those combinations and wait for another million years to connect the other part? No, it doesn't work that way. The whole thing has to be present right from the start. And these cannot be random. These cannot be random. And in fact, all those, if you take the whole of the brain, there are about 500 different components. So these pathways link to those 500 different components. So this is the complexity of the brain. Many patients in evolution, they say brain development, most of the time they say, oh, the size of the brain increased. That's all they say. If you really want to explain in what way things have changed from maybe apes to humans or any other animal, you need to go down to this level. You need to go down to the level of the cells. You need to go down to the level of neuropeptides. And otherwise, what you are saying is, if you say that a helicopter engine has evolved to a Boeing aircraft engine, it is like saying, oh, it has got more metal or more nuts and bolts. Is that explanation? So the evolutionary explanations on brain evolution doesn't say anything. They have to get down to these sort of cellular levels, hormone levels, neuropeptide levels, pathway levels to say this is how our brain is superior. And they never can do that, and they will never do that.
Now, this is interesting, Dr. Jayatunga, because I did just very recently hear someone talking about, oh, you see, there's just this simple difference between our brain and the ape brain. There's a certain gene that we noticed that we have a duplication of, and then there's just a single nucleotide difference between that gene. So we just think that there was a gene duplication and then a single nucleotide polymorphism, and then voila, our brain got bigger, and that's how we got the human brain. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the simplistic way they give. In evolution descriptions, they all think or they give the impression that all body complexities are similar to a beak. A mutation can do the trick. I'm going to come on to the genes a bit later, so we'll discuss that. Allen Institute for Brain Studies, as I said, is the leading organizations doing brain research in states, and Christopher Koch, the chief executive of Allen Institute, was asked, "You have been doing brain research for such a long time. What is the current state of your understanding of the brain function?" And this is what he said: "We don't know anything about the brain. The current understanding of neuronal system is at a level of this worm, which has got 302 nerve cells." And that is the diagram of the pathways they have done. But our brain has got 86 billion neurons. So you can see how long it's going to take. Certainly not during our generation, but maybe in 10,000 years' time. I don't know. On a similar issue, probably you don't know, there was a brain study project done by European Union, and 500 scientists were involved, 19 countries. They produced 2,500 papers, and it took 10 years. And one of their conclusions was that we don't know even the basics of our brain, right? And that was their conclusion. You were asking me about the genes, right? We are the superior species on Earth due to our cognition, due to our dexterity, and our language. Now, if anyone says that, oh, cognition is just a mutational chain, that's why we are superior, that doesn't add up, because it's not only our cognition but dexterity and the language. Those three in combination only has made us the superior species on Earth. Now, for cognition itself, it has needed over 1,000 extra genes. Over 1,000 extra genes. And what is a gene? A gene consists of around 27,000 nucleotides on average in a human gene. When we talk of a mutation, it's a change in one nucleotide in general terms, right? So how can only humans get 1,000 extra genes? Is it by chance or by design?
Well, my
Because
answer is design, but a lot of people
yes,
seem to think that this can come about by long periods of time, natural processes, random
yeah,
changes, which are
I
somehow
mean,
going to coordinate together.
whenever we challenge them for thousands of scenarios, their answer is the same: random mutations, natural selection. And those are whatever the scenario complexity which we give, like they recite these things as if these can explain everything. I told you frontier supercomputer would have needed 10,000 steps through scientists to make, and they expect us to believe that our brain, which is million times more efficient, is a product of two or three mechanisms: random mutations, natural selection. Is that logical?
Not at all. And I
Not at
think this
all.
should be obvious to all, but for some reason it's not. And in addition to that, I want to add too, when you're talking, you showed those big computers. I keep thinking about what a small space our brain is in.
Yeah.
You're showing these massive computers that take all this intelligence to put together, and they're taking up a ton of space. And here we have more than that inside this compact location.
Yes. Our brain is just 1.5 kgs. So, on the issue of cognition, so I'm just going to tell about the components of our cognition: moral values, love, judgment. We wonder, we speculate, we can study, we accumulate knowledge, we do research, we understand the meaning of life, we understand beauty, we can appreciate art, we can express joy, sadness, anxiety, we have goals, dreams, aspirations, we can do executive functions, sexual behavior, we can reason, we can multitask. These are some of the cognitive features. Now, most of them, or probably all of them, are not life limiting. So, therefore, none of those are within the natural selection criteria, right? There are 8.7 million species on Earth, and only humans have got this. Is it by chance or design? Um, so, what all animals, or primates, or all animals have got nerves, muscles, blood vessels, blood cells, gut mechanisms, kidneys, just like humans, right? That's why sometimes we even look at pig organ transplants, right? We do lots of research on mice because the mechanisms are similar. So all these animals have got features similar to human anatomy. But when it comes to cognition, all these cognitive factors, why only in humans? Is it by chance or is it by design? So, um, so I believe evolution has not been able to answer any of them, and even they can't even come close to answering this. So this is the specific study saying that the latest and largest genetic association study of intelligence has identified 206 genomic loci and implicated 1,041 genes, adding 191 novel loci and 963 novel genes. So, novel genes, these are new to humans, these are not seen in other animals. How can such a massive number of genes suddenly appear in humans? And these are not mutations, these are genes. As I said, each gene has got 27,000 on average nucleotides. So how is this possible, even possible? Why only in humans? There are 8.7 million species on Earth. Why can't the issues like knowledge, joy, sadness, goals, dreams appear in snakes or rats or horses? Why is this whole package only in humans, right? And is it random? No, all these are absolutely purposeful for life, isn't it? We
Seems
use
so to
all
me. Yes. Mhm.
we use all these in our day-to-day life. So these are purposeful features given only to humans. Now, lots of people, lots of evolutionists say, uh, show this sort of homology to say that that's the ape hand and human hand. Look, the bones are similar, and therefore, uh, human hand has evolved from the ape hand. That's the general description they give, isn't it? But
Yes.
do they look at the totality of the issues involved in this change? They never look at the totality. They look at the bones and say, "Oh, look, they look the same, therefore it has evolved." Now we'll look at the changes it needs for ape hand to become a human hand. Now, apes are knuckle walkers, and we have got a high degree of dexterity, and most of our hand functions are from that. So, what are the things we can do with our hands which apes can't? We can write. We use our hands for washing, dressing, toileting. We use our hands to carry things. We use our hands to express joy, despair, surprise, hope. We use our hands to applaud, welcome people. We use our hands to threaten, express sympathy or empathy. We use our hands for sports, throwing, or threading a needle. We are the only species on earth who can throw an object accurately, right? Our
Mhm.
hands are full of sensations where we can, even if you go blind or even if you close your eyes by touching, we can tell the texture of the thing and stickiness or temperature of the surface. There are 14 types of sensory fibers in our hand. So where have these functions come from? Is it from the bones, which similar bones? No, all those functions have come from the brain connections, right? If we don't have the brain connections, we can't do anything, or we can't do any of those functions. So if when they describe, say that ape hand has evolved to a human hand, they need to explain how all our functions have come, which are not done by which apes don't do. And that has come from massive brain connections. In all those, I showed you some pathways in our motor cortex, sensory cortex, cerebellum, uh, and billions of neurons, right? And one of the most important things is the changes need to come simultaneously. You can't have peripheral changes without the brain changes, right? You can't wait for millions of years for them to appear by chance. You can't use them. Whatever the peripheral changes which give the dexterity, the muscles uh, will not be of any use unless you have simultaneous changes in the brain. And this is one of the most important things which I have been mentioning. In macroevolution, our, our systems are not add-on system. You can't keep on adding things to make it better. You need multiple simultaneous changes, particularly in the brain. at the beginning I said brain controls most of the body organs. So if you say, for example, uh, we get a new muscle which will enable us to run faster, which you can argue that, oh, it will give us a survival benefit. But that muscle cannot work on its own unless it is connected to rest of the muscles through the brain. And that has to happen simultaneously. These simultaneous changes are a significant challenge to evolution because it is not one random mutation. It has to follow with so many changes to make it a reality. Otherwise, none of these changes will not happen because they can't wait for millions of years for it to catch up by chance. So, again, this shows the representation of various body parts in the what we call motor cortex in the brain. As you see, the hand has got a bigger area in the brain, right? So that's why all the functions which I mentioned before come because of these massive changes in the motor cortex representing our hand. Now, ape will not have those changes because they are just knuckle walkers, right? And similarly, our mouth and tongue has got a bigger representation because of language. So that shows the muscle activation chart, right? When we take one step, our brain automatically controls 200 muscles. When we take one step, within a second, brain controls 200 muscles. And this chart shows 20 of those 200 muscles. So it's 1/10. So there will be 20 of those charts, and that is the complexity of the brain. Now, if any of those, as you say, muscles contract in combinations, right? If any of those bars are not there or shorter or longer, we will have abnormal walk, right? Now, this again is dynamic complexity. Evolution cannot, I will repeat, evolution cannot explain dynamic complexity. If I play a sport, badminton, tennis, rugby, those combinations will change many hundred times depending on the activity we do, whether we jump or run or scrum or kneel or whatever it is. Those muscle combinations will change. How can random mutational process explain this? Can dynamic complexity, can it be explained through random mutation? Because it is not one combination. As I said, it will be hundreds or thousands. Previously, I said 100,000 chemical reactions happen via 50 to 100 neuropeptides. This is similar. These are dynamic complexity. Now, in my practice, we do treat stroke patients. And that is a picture showing a stroke patient walking, abnormal walking. You can see they have got foot drop. And then we stimulate few muscles to correct it. During the gait cycle, we correct few muscles to correct the foot drop so that they can walk better. We can only control maybe up to about 5 muscles, where brain automatically controls 200 muscles. So that is the complexity of the brain. So, how many sensations do you think we have got, Rebecca?
Well, I've heard you talk about this before, so I know it's more than 5.
Yes, 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 yes. Uh, we do have many, many more sensations, maybe up to about 30. Other than the 5 which we all know: hunger, thirst, muscle tension, balance, itchiness, fullness, magnetoreception, sexual pressure, pleasure, proprioception, the chemicals in the blood like sugar levels, adrenaline. These are some of the sensations which we experience, and all those are essential. Now, in that picture, I have shown, and uh, these are absolutely important for life. Nothing is random, right? Nothing is uh, all sensations are necessary. So that picture is showing a patient who has lost sensations. When you lose sensations, the rest of the anatomy changes. You can see the abnormal foot. And the other top picture is during life, our brain automatically controls erect posture. Right. So the muscles on either side of the spine is balanced perfectly. But when there's a problem or lesion, they get what we call scoliosis. We actually detect the power of the brain only when there's a problem, because otherwise we take things for granted. We never we we see the effect of the brain most of the time. Some When there's a problem, when there's a lesion, there's illness, or when there's abnormality, as you say, uh, any change could disrupting the brain mechanisms will cause a problem. So out of those
Mhm.
sensations which I said, if the if we lose sensations, then there will be significant abnormality to rest of the body, right?
So are you saying that this spine curvature and like the malformation is because something went wrong in the brain with
Or brain or the spinal cord.
okay, and it's like has to
Yeah,
do with the bones, muscles, spinal cord, like just
yeah,
so
yeah,
wow, okay.
yeah. So we see these effects only when there is a problem, because in our normal day-to-day life we take things for granted, and we see the power of the brain function only when these sort of things happen, or when people get a stroke or multiple sclerosis or brain injury. Then only we see the disruption of the brain pathways cause lots of problems. So brain is also connected to many sensory systems like taste, smell, hearing, eye function, and all these things are also very complex. For example, we experience up to 100,000 different tastes. We can experience up to 1 trillion different forms of smells. Uh, our eyes, uh, every second, it's said that our eyes send 2.3 gigabytes to the brain, which is equivalent to 18,000 iPod songs. Every second, our eyes send information to the brain, which is 2.3 gigabytes. And we see over 200 200,000 shades of color. So what I'm trying to say is all these sensory systems are also hugely complex, and they are not random. They are all needed for our life. When it comes to hearing, we have got a hearing range between 20 and 20,000 hertz, but some animals do have higher hearing ranges or lower hearing ranges. That's why elephants during tsunami, none of the elephants were affected because they felt the vibrations and they ran inwards, and none of the elephants were affected. So if you look at each types of sensations, they are also extremely complex. So as you know, as I mentioned before, human eye is being discussed many times in evolution discussions, but they never discuss the brain pathways linked to the eye. It is through brain pathways only we can recognize, understand, and use the visual signal. So that picture shows different parts of the brain which is needed for the function of the eye, and then so eye evolution cannot be discussed in isolation. Eye evolution has to be discussed also with the brain pathways, otherwise it is not complete. And and once again, these brain pathways have to develop at the same time when human develop. It cannot, these brain pathways cannot come millions of years later by chance.
And that's
Next.
because your eye, if you had an eye and it had no connections to the brain, then you wouldn't it wouldn't be selected for, because it's just a blob sitting there doing nothing, right?
That's right. I mean, to interpretation of the visual signals, we
Right.
need brain pathways, and all these different areas which are highlighted do have different functions, and all those have to be present for the eye to work normally.
And I can imagine that you could live without eyes. Of course, we know you can. But there's so many things, right, that the brain is connected to, that if you didn't have them all in place at once, you'd be dead.
Sorry, repeat that again.
What I'm saying is, okay, so one could say, well, yes, well, you could live without eyes, but there's so many systems that the brain is connected to, that if those systems were not in place with the brain, then you wouldn't be able to live at all.
No,
Like the
that's
circulatory system.
no. That's why I mentioned in the beginning. Brain controls almost all body systems, and again, from evolution point of view, if they say that, we'll say we get a new digestive chamber in addition to the stomach, which will help us, for example. But that has to be connected to the brain. If it's not connected to the brain, it will be useless. So brain controls most of the body functions, and as you say, if some pathways are not there, life is not compatible, or there will be huge um, abnormalities or difficulties. So this is again the hearing mechanism. Again, you can see the intricacy of the hearing mechanism, and these cannot come randomly, because each aspect of this hearing mechanism is finely tuned. So you get the external ear and the ear canal, and you get the eardrum. And then it is connected to three bones, and they had to be precise. And that mechanism amplifies the sound so much so that it gives a vibration to those circular canals. It has got circular canals has got fluid, and it gives vibrations. And there are cells within the circular canals, and different vibrations. There are different hairs in the circular canals, and depending on the vibration, it gives a different signal to the brain. So you can see the complexity of all body systems. These cannot come one at a time. For example, those three uh, ossicles in the middle ear, you can't have one ossicle coming being developed via a mutation one time and the next ossicle to come in 1,000 years time. It doesn't work that way. The whole package has to be there. It cannot come one at a time. Evolution descriptions fail massively with this sort of intricate design. They never can come one at a time. All have to come almost at the same time. So, what we see in life are perfect systems. And perfection comes from intelligence only. So, you can see a normal walking pattern. This is how we analyze the gait in a normal in a gait lab. You can see all the pressure distribution lines perfect. They cannot be improved any further, right? So they are optimal. Our human gait is optimal for walking, and it cannot be improved any further. That optimal designs come only from intelligence. But on the other hand, the other picture is the walking of a cerebral palsy patient. Now you can see how abnormal the walking is, how energy consuming, how inefficient is that. If evolution gave rise to our gait, we should be seeing walking patterns like the cerebral palsy patient, abnormal, inefficient, uh, energy consuming walking patterns. That's not what we see. In a Our normal walking is optimized, and that is a design feature.
Now, why would you say we would see like suboptimal walking? Because what if I'm just talking like an evolutionist, they would say, well, you see, the reason our walking is so optimal is because it's been refined by years of natural selection. So, with humans, okay, maybe it's only couple 100,000 years, but you see, our walking has been refined. Do you see a problem with that reasoning?
No, yes, I see huge problems. First of all systems are optimally designed. So, as I said, perfection comes only from intelligence. And I did show the muscle activation chart earlier. So, as I said, when we take a step, there are 200 muscles involved in that, in taking that step. And every joint movement is perfect. How can a random mutational process know how to activate things? How can this possible? These are once again dynamic changes. How can they are not like a beak? Beak is a static change, but when it comes to dynamic changes, uh, evolution, as far as I know, will cannot give any answers. So I don't know whether you have heard about the microbiome.
Yes.
So microbiome is in a body. There are lots of bacteria in our gut, in our mouth, or ears, or nostrils. There are trillions of bacteria, right? And most of these bacteria are in the gut. And they, for our survival, those bacteria are essential because those bacteria influence what we call gut brain pathways. It helps with our immunity. If those things are defective, we could get anxiety, depression, autistic spectrum things. It is linked to so many disorders. There are studies showing that if you get rid of all the bacteria in the gut, right? They have done it in mice. They died within a week, right? So, so we are dependent on these microorganisms in our bodies. So that's called microbiome. So microbiome is essential for life. Now, when we talk about evolution and mutations, we are saying random mutations in whatever the part of the body or whatever the change it will make. But here we see our body mechanisms reacting and developing systems based on other species. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So we are responding to the physiology of microorganisms to develop our systems. So how can a random mutational process develop that? And we are not talking about one or two types of organisms. They have identified more than 4,000 different types of bacteria contributing to our microbiome. So, how can random mutations know the physiology of other species to develop our brain gut pathways? So, evolution, as far as I see, will not have any answers to such issues, particularly when it comes to the microbiome. I have been telling all this time about how marvelous our brains are. But our brains are not superior in every facet. Some animals do have better brain function in certain areas, which is essential for their life. So, the navigational power of birds are much superior than, of course, humans. It is much better than aircraft. Where aircraft will need all the ground controls, communicating with them where to land and how to, all the mechanics. But birds fly for thousands and thousands of miles. They go from one end of the earth to another end, and they go to the same nest. So,
Amazing.
yeah, so the navigational power, which is, of course, controlled through their nervous system and the brain, is much better in birds than in humans. So, but that is essential for their life. That's why they are given that special feature. And similarly, bears have got can smell up to about 18 miles, they say, right? So again, due to olfactory and brain pathways, right? Of course, similarly, dogs have much better smell than humans. That's why they are used to detect various things. Similarly, echolocation, all these work through brain pathways. So, in those specific circumstances, animals are much better than humans. We don't need uh, the ability to smell up to 18 miles like bears. Bears, because they live in large isolated places, they need to have that. So all these are essential for their lifestyle. So that part of the brain is much better than what we have got. And when it comes to echolocation, now bats and dolphins, they are not in the same branch of the tree of life. Now, you can say that if uh, whatever the function is a product of one random mutation, you can say, oh, yeah, they also by chance they got that mutation, and dolphins also by chance got the mutation. But all these mechanisms, just like the ear, is hugely complex, tuned, involving many structures, including the brain, the hearing, the voice, the all those things, multi systemic mechanisms. So you can't explain how bats got echolocation, and the same thing in dolphins, because there's no they are not linked on tree of life pathways. So again, I was telling about some superiorities of brain power in animals. So again, uh, the brain power of newborn is very limited compared to many animals. Most animals, soon after their birth, within half an hour or 1 hour, they had to run. They had to go with rest of they had to identify who their parents are. They had to identify the terrain, and they had to run with the adults. So highly developed brain function at birth. And that lizard, I don't know whether you have seen Discovery program. That lizard was in an egg just half an hour before, and soon after hatching, it has to run to the beach. Run to the beach. It has to run faster than the snakes, right? Can you imagine humans like that?
No, and
So
that's really interesting
yeah,
because it takes us so long to learn
so
how to
long.
run.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the brain power is so developed at the time of birth in most of the animals, and humans are so weak. But though that brain power is essential for those animals for their lifestyle. So what I'm trying to say is brain power is enormous. We really even don't understand our brain power. That is why it has been labeled as the most complex structure in the universe. And um, it controls all our body systems. And if anyone says uh, a random mutation developed a muscle or something like that, or a body part, they need to explain how the brain pathways came about. In my opinion, they had to come at the same time. Brain controls many dynamic responses, which evolution has not got any answers. And evolutionary description of brain saying that, oh, the frontal lobe got bigger. That sort of explanations are no explanations. And our cognition and dexterity and hand function are the things which have made us the superior being, superior species on earth. And all these are absolute design features, and they cannot be random. And brain is, in my opinion, is the pinnacle of creation. And in it is not only a blow to evolution. I think it's a graveyard for evolution. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much. Well, yes, and would you say that this is like one fatal blow for evolution, but there are many more that could be called fatal blows for evolution?
I mean, within the brain description, there are so many fatal blows. Yes, yes. I mean, there are many fatal blows for evolution. For example, evolution, as I mentioned, that uh, our biology is not an add-on system. So you can't have a mutation giving rise to significant function on its own. It is multisystemic, and also many times its simultaneous changes have to happen, particularly if you look at tree of life type of evolution. Massive changes need to happen, and they are multisystemic, and they are never add-on systems, what evolution is trying to describe. And life is much more complex than a theory which originated because of a change in the shape of a beak.
Yeah, I have some other questions to ask you, but I wanted to mention your book, Intelligent Design as a Proof of Creation. This is Dr. Jayatunga's book. It's very accessible if you want an overview of, the problems with evolution, the evidence for creation. This is really a good for people who are getting into this and would like some information. So, yeah. Did you
Yes,
want to
it
say
is.
something?
It is a very simple book, as I mentioned. It cuts across from evidence for intelligent design from the universe uh, down to cells and proteins, and I have given evidence, scientific evidence at all levels supporting intelligent design, and it is available through Amazon.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll put the link to that in the description of this video. So, Dr. Jayatunga, what is your experience with evolution when you were, going through your medical training and everything? Was this something that was heavily pushed on you? And was there a time when you believed in evolution?
Yes, in fact, I believed in evolution in my young days, but I always had doubts. And as I through medical school and sort of when you understand uh, science more and more, it simply doesn't add because our biological systems are so complex. It cannot be based on two or three mechanisms as evolution trying to describe. Our systems need hundreds or thousands of mechanisms, right? I'll just give another example, Rebecca. If I want to buy a new house, right? I will look at the neighborhood, the area, the road network, whether it is liable to have floods, crime rate, employment opportunities, hospitals. Now, when there are multiple factors involved, before even when before deciding to buy the house, only an intelligence or a computer system can decide what is the best option. So when there are multiple factors are needed uh, in making a decision, only an intelligence or a programmed computer system can put all those information and get the best option. Natural selection cannot do that. If you take the mechanisms needed for our foot, we run, jump, climb, squat, sit down, and again, you need to look at all the functions before looking at the structure. So just like the decision to buy a house, you have to consider lots of things even before starting it. Natural selection cannot do that. It cannot analyze. It cannot. It cannot decide. I mean,
It's blind until the thing already comes about.
It's blind.
Yeah.
It is not like the beak. I mean, beak is just one thing, but when there are multiple factors involved, evolution mechanisms are powerless. When there are multiple systems involved, evolution mechanisms are powerless. When there are multiple complexities involved or dynamic complexities involved, evolution mechanisms have not got any answers.
Wow. And what makes you passionate about sharing this with people?
Well, uh, over the years, I sort of realized that evolutionary mechanisms do not add up. And during COVID, I had plenty of time, and I thought, oh, I better write a book, and that's how I started. And since that time, I have become very passionate on this topic, because the challenge is huge to break down the thinking given to the masses through schools, universities, and these some of the thinking is ingrained in people, and it is important that we show the science. Many times, evolutionists say that science supports evolution, and it's the biblical teaching will support creation. I think it's important for us to say that no, it is the science which supports intelligent design, not evolution. Scientific knowledge, information, and research supports intelligent design, not evolution.
And in your field, if evolution suddenly like disappeared as a theory and nobody believed it anymore, would that cause harm to the field that you work in at all? And the reason I'm asking is because I hear so many people say, you don't understand, all of our modern science, biological science is evolution is foundational. Without evolution, we just lose so much of what we have in science. What do you think about that claim?
No, I mean, this is what they say, but when you challenge them, they haven't got any answers. There are tons of evidence for microevolution, but there is no hard and fast evidence for macroevolution, in my opinion. I would describe microevolution, if it's a drop of water, macroevolution is an ocean. You cannot practically make an ocean by collecting one drop of water at a time. There's a huge difference. Wikipedia description of macroevolution says that there are different mechanisms involved in macroevolution, which is not in and therefore it cannot be explained via microevolution. So most of the time, many times when the evolutionists say that there's tons of evidence, yes, that is for microevolution, but not for macroevolution.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your presentation. And so appreciate your time. And I think you've made the case that brain complexity is a fatal blow to evolution.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really enjoyed this discussion.